I want to tell something about the Outlaw movement in Brazil in the early 20s and 30s of the 20th century. And one of the most famous outlaws was a man named Lampiâo. That was his nickname. His real name was Virgilino Fidel da Silva. And he was born in Pernambuco in 1897 in the poor dry land of the Sertão, the wilderness. And when his father got killed in a feud with the police, he was just seeking revenge, and he became an outlaw. And well, the story goes that he was a kind of equivalent of Jesse James, and on the other hand, a kind of a Robin Hood. He robbed from the rich to give it to the poor. And it wasn't true in it, but the other hand, he was a cruel man. He killed a lot of people. They say more than 1,000 people he killed, and raped more than 200 women. Well, that's what the story says. Yeah, and he was a real cruel man. No fooling around with Lampião, Lampoon in English, a nickname after his gun barrel turned red of his first shooting, and at night it turned red, like a lampoon. So they call him Lampião. And he himself rather called him Capitan. Strange name for him, I guess, but he was running through the Sertão, which at that time was a real poor area. There are a lot of poor people in the dry land where sometimes no rain was falling for more than a year, and people suffer. And the rich, the coronels, the great fazenderos, well, they were doing well. They abused the people, oppressed the people, and so there were some people who were riding against them. And the social problems still exist in the northeast of Brazil, and not only in the northeast. Lampião and his gang, with his wife, his love, Maria Bonita. There were some women also joined the outlaw gang. They lived and they had to survive for more than 18 years in the Sertão. So they had a culture. They had to make their own clothes, and they had to survive to eat. And it was a culture that stands outside the culture of the city, And we're not only the outlaws, but they had a life. And Lampião, he rode in the northeast of Brazil, in Pernambuco, Bahia, Sergipe, Alagoas, in northeast of Bahia, the north of Bahia. And in spite of it all, he thought that everybody was afraid of him. And that could not happen to him. He was almost blind on his right eye. So we prayed to the Santa Luzia, the protector of the blind, and he wore glasses. He felt that nothing could happen with him, and it went wrong that day in July in 1938 when he was actually betrayed by a Jew named Joca Bernandes. And the police, João Bezerra, who was after him for a long time, had his big chance, and they were sleeping in the camp in Angicos, in Sergipe, the state of Sergipe. And one early morning, it was drizzling, raining, and everybody was asleep, and the dogs, even the guard dogs were sleeping. They surrounded the camp, the military surrounded the camp, and they opened fire. And it just was 20 minutes, they killed Maria Bonito, Lampiâo, and 9 others. 40 Outlaws had a chance to escape, but Lampiâo was dead, and Maria Bonita, and one of the best framed outlaws. But it wasn't enough for the military. They cut off the heads of those outlaws, and they brought them to Salvador, Bahia, for an examination by specialists of the State Forensic Institute, and to prove that Lampiâo was really dead. And later they were showed to the public in the city of Piranhas, where the people could see that the heads of the outlaws. A little bizarre story, but it ran along with the history of Lampiâo. He was a kind of, like I said already said, a kind of hero, a kind of anarchist hero. You know, he fought against a system that was definitely wrong in the northeast of Brazil, and still is. And on the other hand, he was a cruel person. And he was that cruel that the story goes. There are a lot of stories about him. They made movies about him. And, that he arrived after his death. Sure, he didn't went to heaven, so he went to hell. But at the gate of hell, the devil said, "You are not welcome here, Lampiâo. You're not welcome in my hell. Go back where you belong. Go back to the sertão." So some people thinking the spirit of Lampiâo still ran around somewhere in the northeast of Brazil. And, well, the story really goes on. And he was one of the outlaws that maybe made necessary at that time, because the situation was there. And everywhere where there's a poor social situation, where the social movement is that wrong, and the rich abuse and oppress the poor, there will always be an outlaw, people like Lampiâo.